Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Tonight I ordered a targeted military strike on the airfield in Syria from where the chemical attack was launched. It is in this vital national security interest of the United States to prevent and deter the spread and use of deadly chemical weapons. There can be no dispute that Syria used banned chemical weapons, violated its obligations under the Chemical Weapons Convention, and ignored the urging of the UN Security Council.
And that was President Trump making his case for why he did this strike. This strike represents the first time a U.S. military operation has targeted the regime of President Bashar al-Assad. Now, a lot of people are kind of confused on both sides of the aisle today, a lot of conflicting feelings. People are saying that this was rash. There was not an independent investigation that was taken. And they're also wondering, was this just a simple airstrike that took out an airbase there in Syria where these alleged chemical attacks were launched from? Or is this going to be the beginning of new war in the Middle East, where President Trump campaigned on staying out of the Middle East and putting America first, not making the Middle East great again? So some of his supporters are saying, look, you know what? He killed the Russia narrative with this. He's proving that he's going to be a very tactical president. This was a tactical move, and it was meant to send a very direct message to China's president, who he was there having a meeting with him at the exact time that they were preparing the missiles for this launch. And surprisingly, many of his biggest detractors are now singing Trump's praises. They're saying that last night he actually became the leader of the free world. So again, these were 59 Tomahawk land attack missiles. They were fired from 2 U.S. Guided missile destroyers there. This was a series of strikes on a Syrian airfield. This is believed to be the origin of the chemical weapons strike. Now, Syria denies this. They say they denied using chemical weapons in Idlib whatsoever. They did not and will not use chemical weapons on their people. What they did say, and what the Russians seemed to agree with, was that the Syrian army had bombed a warehouse belonging to rebels that contained chemical weapons. Now, the rebels deny this, and in fact, the rebels were actually celebrating this airstrike because, as we pointed out, this doesn't help, wouldn't have helped President Assad to launch this chemical attack, but it would help the rebels. So they were celebrating today, of course. Now, they were responding, Syria responded to calls for an international investigation. They said that they wanted guarantees that any fact-finding mission into Idlib's attack would be impartial and would not be politicized. But that's not going to happen now, because what's done is done, and any sort of investigation is going to have to justify these attacks launched by this strike that was launched by President Trump. Assad has responded, saying that this was foolish, it was irresponsible. Senator Rand Paul as well has opposed Trump's airstrikes in Syria. He said the United States was not attacked here, and that the president needs congressional approval for military action as required by the Constitution. He calls on him to come before Congress and have a proper debate before going to war with Syria. He also underscored once again, our prior interventions in this region have done nothing to make us safer, and Syria will be no different. Now, the Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev has complained again, saying that the missile strikes there were one step away from clashing with the Russian military. Now, we know that the Russian military was given about a half-hour warning there so they could get their personnel out. But he took to social media to say that the election fog has lifted, and instead of an overworked statement about a joint fight against the biggest enemy, which is ISIS, the Trump administration proved that it will fiercely fight the legitimate Syrian government in a tough contradiction with international law and without UN approval, in violation of its own procedures, stipulating that Congress must first be notified of any military operation unrelated to aggression against the U.S. on the verge of a military clash with Russia. Very interesting posturing there. And now we're hearing Rex Tillerson coming out saying that steps are underway to remove Assad. And this is what a lot of Trump's biggest supporters are very upset about, because they are seeing this as regime change. They are not seeing this as just one strike on an air base there in Syria. And now that we have Rex Tillerson, the U.S. Secretary of State, coming out announcing Thursday that steps are underway to remove the Syrian president Bashar al-Assad from power. Take a listen.
I think further, it is very important that the Russian government consider carefully their continued support of the Assad regime.
Sir, does Assad have to go?
Assad's role in the future is uncertain, clearly, and with the acts that he has taken, it would seem that there would be no role for him to govern the Syrian people.
No role to govern the Syrian people, AKA regime change. It's time for him to get out, because he has been at odds with world leaders for the past 6 years. He hasn't just left. So now they're kind of saying, well, he's gonna leave now peacefully because there's no role for Assad. So this is kind of, is Donald Trump flopping on his campaign promises to stay out of the Middle East? Or was he just saying that a few days ago, that he was going to leave Assad in power to confuse everyone and to placate his base? Because that's, of course, what he campaigned on. Now, Trump's loudest supporters are kind of turning against him. We've got Nigel Farage saying many Trump voters will be worried about this military intervention. Where will it end? Ann Coulter tweeted out, Trump campaigned on not getting involved in the Middle East, said it always helps our enemies and creates more refugees. Then he saw a picture on TV. And of course, Paul Joseph Watson said this as well. I guess Trump wasn't Putin's puppet after all. He was just another deep state neocon puppet. Now, I implore everyone to check out the 4th hour of the Alex Jones Show today. Paul Joseph Watson was on with Bill Mitchell. So these are two very outspoken proponents of Donald Trump who are kind of agreeing. They're from the same side, but they're, they were having some disagreements there. Very good conversation that was had on the Alex Jones Show. If you want to kind of see where both sides of Trump's supporters stand on this airstrike. Now, what's interesting is that we have, you think, well, what would have happened if Hillary Clinton would have gotten elected? Would we have been any better off? Well, just hours before this strike was launched, Hillary Clinton emerged from the woods to say that she believed that we should have taken out Assad's airfields. Take a listen.
And I really believe that we should have and still should take out his airfields and prevent him from being able to use them to bomb innocent people and drop sarin gas on them.
So it would have been just the same exact thing. That's how we kind of know that this was all predetermined. And now you're agreeing with the neocons there and the establishment. It doesn't matter who you voted for. And Hillary Clinton just proves once again she's still, got her finger on the pulse. But also take a listen to this extra creepy Brian Williams, who was rushed in MSNBC to cover the breaking news. He's waxing poetic about the bombing, these airstrikes there in Syria.
We see these beautiful pictures at night from the decks of these two U.S. Navy vessels in the Eastern Mediterranean. I am tempted to quote the great Leonard Cohen, I'm guided by the beauty of our weapons. And they are beautiful pictures of fearsome armaments making what is for them a brief flight over to this airfield. What did they hit? What are you convinced?
Oh my goodness, so poetic. I mean, this is the propaganda machine in full effect out there, just pumping this war propaganda. War, it's so beautiful. Oh, now don't look at any of the bloody bodies that are going to be splayed all across the Middle East here soon, but just look at those beautiful weapons. And of course, you've got CNN host Fareed Zakaria singing his praises. Trump became president that night. Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi broke from their colleagues backing Trump's missile strike on Syria. But a lot of people are saying, you know what, this is a very tactical move by President Trump, so let's just wait and see. The New York Times is reporting that the U.S. strikes on Syria put China's President Xi in a tough position for the Trump meeting because, of course, this was taking place right as President Trump was opening the door to Mar-a-Lago to welcome China's president and his wife. China has generally sided with Russia in defending Syria's President Bashar al-Assad. And it also will now have to worry if Mr. Trump might be prepared to order a similar strike on North Korea. So could this have been a very tactical move to say, look, we're here to bargain. And he did say that he was very good at making deals.
I think that's what is important to understand, David, is two elements in this. Number one, in order to refresh your memory and your audience's memory, I was involved with our military intelligence about 8-9 years ago, just before the Syrian civil war, when I literally went into Syria and Bashar al-Assad and his people interrogated me and then allowed me to travel all over the country for 18 days. What I came out of that was, and I reported this to my contacts in military intelligence, was a very simple point, that Bashar al-Assad was not going to leave. And I had also worked against Hafiz Assad, his father. So I understood very well that Hafiz Assad, Bashar Assad, the all Alawite community, which is a minority community in Syria, would still dominate a predominantly Sunni country. What happened subsequently was that Assad was not very effective in handling what was really a water war. And the people from Homs and Hama came up, and they were Sunnis, and they protested the handling of the water, distribution of food subsequently. Anyway, what subsequently happened is that our intelligence community, through the CIA and other elements of the civilian part, created ISIS and al-Qaeda, and you've talked about it. But the most important part was that our military understood very clearly what it was that I was saying, and understood that there was no way we were going to be in the business of regime changing. Having said that, I understand a little bit about General McMaster and even General Mattis. And I think the important thing to remember in both these gentlemen, and also the surrounding facts, is that President Trump initiated this strike just at the moment when when President Xi Jinping of China was literally at the doorstep of Mar-a-Lago. And he did this, and I think our military did it, for very important reasons. Number one, it was a very clear message to President Xi, more than to anybody else, more than Russia, more than the ISIS or anybody else, that, listen, you, President Xi, you were involved in violence during the Chinese Cultural Revolution. You don't like violence. We don't like violence. But if you have any question as to the resolve of a president, i.e. Trump, as opposed to Obama or anyone else, let me reassure you that I will order a strike against some base, air base, which is not as relevant as anybody thinks, and it will be done in your presence. I think President Xi Jinping was absolutely stunned by what he saw and what he realized. That message that was sent to President Xi Jinping was also translated to Prime Minister and President and CEO of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, who has been playing around with nuclear weapons as a way of creating some leverage for negotiation. Our only negotiation, quite frankly, is through China. China can literally suppress anything that North Korea wants to do. Our military does not want to go into North Korea. They don't want to do preemptive action. They don't want to go into a war in Syria. Our military does not want to follow the neocons, even though some neocons correctly came in, but they were thrown out. Thanks to Alex Jones, myself, and others. Elliot Abrams didn't come in. A whole bunch of others didn't come in. But when we're talking about our generals, McMaster, who wrote The Dereliction of Duty, we're talking of General Mattis, they understood very clearly that war is not the solution to what our problem is. What is a solution is what I call the kabuki of war. In other words, we will show you what we're capable of doing at the right time and the right place. So the Syrian so-called attack was really done not for Syria, not for Russia. All of them were cleared beforehand. Russia understood this was happening. Turkey was informed. Every country was informed. Saudi Arabia, Israel, even Syria, and Bashar al-Assad understood it. But the only people who were not informed was President Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un. What this means now is that the matrix of negotiation with the president of China and North Korea has suddenly shifted to our advantage. For 20 to 30 years, I've been involved with North Korea, and quite frankly, it's been frustrating. I've been held back on my capability to do regime change because I knew exactly how to take down the North Koreans. The greatest fear China has, and has been a fear for the United States for the past 30 years, but has not been my fear, is the fact that we can literally destabilize the borders of North Korea. We can do it militarily, we can do it economically, we can do it politically. What Trump was doing and what the generals were doing was saying, look, we're not going to get into the business of attacking North Korea. We're not going to get into the business of destabilizing your borders. But if you don't change your behavior, we can assure you that we have the willpower to do whatever is necessary to inculcate and to execute whatever actions we need.
This is one of the biggest secrets out there. The missing link of why our ancestors, whether you were in Africa or ancient Albion, which is England today, why our ancestors were so much stronger. I mean, there are huge archaeological reports, all sorts of anthropology studies, you can look them up for yourself, that show that humans, just an average farmer of 10,000 years ago in England, was stronger than Olympic athletes today. In the final equation, everyone knows our modern society has lost its vitality. The sperm counts are down like 90%. People are falling apart. They're totally depressed. They're unhappy. What is going on? Every ancient culture was obsessed with what I'm about to reveal to you. Today we call it bone broth, and for thousands of years our ancestors enjoyed its benefits before it became lost to our modern diets of processed junk. That's why I'm so excited to announce the product that is undoubtedly the jewel in the crown of Infowars Life products. Caveman. We lost our vitality because we just ignored the ancient traditions. Everyone knew that you used all the parts of the animal. You used the skin to cover yourself or for shelter. You used the meat for sustenance, the fat for cooking, but you used the bones for strength. We are now introducing Caveman by InfoWarsLife.com, the ultimate in true paleo nutrition with bone broth, turmeric root, chaga mushroom, and 7 total primal superfoods in a single great tasting formula. The bone is so amazing. From the outside structure full of minerals and key cofactors to the marrow that produces the blood for the body. This is the engine of the life essence. I've made a lot of important points here, but this is the one you need to research for yourself because it's so key. High-quality bone broth helps support healthy muscles and connective tissue, while the active compounds in turmeric do battle on the cellular level and help fight free radicals. And collagen is essential to aid healthy tendons, ligaments, and muscle tissue. This is an absolute win-win. You get an amazing product produced right here in America. You support Infowars and all we're doing to promote freedom and the restoration of our republic and promotion of freedom worldwide. The journey towards better health and giving our bodies these amazing compounds that God created starts at InfoWarsLife.com. 3 years in the making, incredible research, and the very best ingredients. I'm Alex Jones, and I may not be a caveman, but compared to these trendies out there in the street, I'm as close as it gets. Join me at InfoWarsLife.com and get your caveman formula today.